Hi everyone, welcome on this new episode of Mel's Talk. This is our second interview here at Hatch, and I'm here with Dr. Thuria Wenbar, the CEO and co-founder of ePharmacy. Thank you, Thuria, for being here with me.
Thank you so much for having me, Mel.
And it's really exciting because your project is amazing, and I want to share it with people who are looking at this video.
Thank you.
So just to do a quick intro, so ePharmacy is an embeddable pharmacy for the web, which allows people to have access to prescription medication through third-party brands. Is that correct?
Exactly, yes.
And so far, you have supported more than 250,000 patients.
Recent milestone, very exciting.
Congratulations, that's amazing.
Thank you so much.
And you partnered, I guess maybe our audience knows it, Ann Summers.
Yep.
Who's a famous brand here in the UK.
Mm-hmm. Ann Summers is one of the largest sex toy and lingerie retailers here in the UK, and they're on a similar mission as us. So actually, it made a lot of sense to collaborate together and tackle female and women's healthcare.
Exactly. So we're going to talk more about that and more about your journey as an entrepreneur, the challenges you had to face, as well maybe your relationship with Hatch, like how they helped you scale as well the business and your vision, obviously, for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
So let's go. So my first question, Thuria, for you, so you're a medical doctor and you're an entrepreneur as well.
Yes.
So tell us a bit more about how those two things happen, and about your journey as an entrepreneur.
Quite a long-winded journey, but I think life is very much like that. You don't necessarily land in the path that you're always going to end up in. So ever since I was a child, I really liked coding. I was one of those kids, complete and utter nerd, sitting there on my computer, making sure my parents couldn't access the phone line because we were back in the dial-up modem days. And despite my love for computers and technology, I come from a Middle Eastern background. Yeah. Both my parents are doctors, so the only career pathway for me was to become a doctor. I graduated from medicine in 2017, having also loved technology, and I entered the working world of the NHS. And we all know it's not a surprise, it's an incredibly broken system. And instead of just sitting there and coming home and complaining to my husband, or actually partner at the time, who is a pharmacist, he challenged me one day and he was like, well, why don't you do something about it? So my complaint at the time was about a quarter of the patients I was seeing in accident and emergency were there for minor health issues. So they're not accidents, they're not emergencies. People are there out of sheer desperation.
So what do you describe as minor health issues, just to be clear?
Yeah, so it's some things like someone's in there for... they've left their asthma medication at home and they're traveling we're in a beachside hospital. So they've come for a holiday, they've left their diabetic medication and they just have no ability to access it. Someone who just isn't able to access their routine GP services because the healthcare system typically has a few weeks wait for minor health issues, and so they feel they've got no other choice but to come to emergency medicine. And you can't fault them. Absolutely, their healthcare issues are completely valid. It's not the right pathway, and we don't have another option within our healthcare system. So I was complaining to my husband, who's a pharmacist, and he's like, why don't you fix it? And so we started on the incredibly delusional journey, trying to solve this massive issue. And we started off in a B2C platform, just to, I guess, prove the concept. And now we realized that actually to become huge, the way to grow is through partnerships. And that's why we've built ePharmacy as this embeddable pharmacy. So we can work with any brand, any company, vetted, to sell prescription medication through their website. So in our case, Ann Summers is a interesting, slightly outside the box collaboration. But there's a lot of women who are struggling to access healthcare for women's sexual health, whether that's menopause, treatments for low libido, even things for urinary tract infections. The idea is just to improve equality of access. Yeah.
So we're going to talk a bit more about how you actually managed to do all this partnership, because that's kind of, as you said, a milestone as well. So tell us, walk through us from the beginning of like what happened, because as well, when you launch your business, you have an idea, but the first steps are really difficult, and you talked about having like an kind of like an MVP, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more how you did it at the beginning.
So our first idea actually failed. It didn't even kind of get any legs. The idea actually was to build a collaboration pathway between the NHS to prevent people from getting to A&E and help the pharmacies to actually fulfill the treatment and act as a interception point. We built the technology for that. It took about 3 months. So that was me coding and Oscar kind of just setting up things. No one wanted it. We were nobodies. We had no traction. We had no proof. It was loads of no's. And their biggest reason at the time was, we don't know who you are. You haven't actually proven this. So instead of being completely and utterly dejected by their no's, Oscar was like, guess we've just got to prove it. So we went into the private healthcare sector. So we built a website facing consumers to say, hey, if you need your prescription medication for minor health issues, you can access it from us. We went live in September 2018.
Wow.
On our first day, without having advertisement or anything along those lines, we had 11 sales.
Wow.
I know.
How would you explain that? Having no advertisement, nothing.
I honestly don't know. I think probably it's a testament to how broken the healthcare system is and how much there was a need for something else. Obviously, over the journey of the business, we learned everything else, right? We learned about advertisement, we learned about finance, we learned about hiring people and building a cool employee culture that supports our team. But those initial early days was just building a website.
So that was kind of your proof of the concept,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. It was very much limited number of treatments, the stuff that I regularly saw patients coming to A&E for. So I think we launched with maybe 20 prescription items. Everything's minor health, low risk, but it's stuff that people really needed. And we just saw traction, and over time we've expanded what we offer, and we've grown.
Wow. So now you're supporting, as we said in the beginning, more than 250,000 patients.
I know.
How would you explain this growth? Because I guess as entrepreneur, you always want to obviously grow your company. Like, how did it go from you from building the MVP to now having that platform? What do you think explained that growth?
I think there's a few factors there, to be honest. The first of all is actually learning how to market yourself. Every business at the end of the day is a marketing business. You're trying to get your message, your vision, your story out there and explain to people why you should choose us. And what are we trying to do to solve the problem? On top of that, I think there's an element of network effects. So as we supported more people, we then had that ability, we were shared across the community. So, I don't know, maybe you found us through an ad to say, hey, we offer this treatment because you were desperate for urinary tract infection treatments. Actually, I'm probably not going to go, I got it rolling back, because you were desperate for getting some asthma medication before you went on holiday. You told your mother that, hey, these people also do X, Y, Z. You told your best friend. So we saw these postcode maps lighting up across the country as we grew, which was very cool. What we also realized is when people find someone that they trust online, they don't really shop around. So we had this incredibly sticky individual. So long as we weren't abusing our relationship with them, so we've always stayed very true to like the actual cost of items. We don't have huge markups. We don't play around with fancy packaged boxes or repackaging medication. I know that's a thing with brands. They obviously really want to show who they are. For us, we are very vanilla. And because we know that's what people want. They want affordable healthcare that looks exactly like what they get from their normal pharmacy. And that's what we're offering.
You're building that trust, I guess, also with people. So how, because you mentioned a bit more about the problem around what's happening in the NHS here in the UK as well. So how are you working? I mean, is it something that you're kind of like doing completely like as an enemy of it, or are you just working with them? Is more like an alternative in terms of what exists?
I definitely wouldn't count it as an enemy. I think the NHS definitely is needing of additional services, and the important thing to note is making sure those additional services are affordable, especially if they're private, because there's a risk to suddenly give private healthcare and make it only affordable for the rich, right? Our NHS prescription charge at the moment is £9.35, and we do our best to keep our prices as close to that mark as possible. Great. So for the individual, regardless of their financial status, they're able to access private healthcare. What we see we're doing, we're reducing the burden on the NHS. We're actively preventing people from having to go to their local A&E and to wait 8 hours, take up resources in terms of blood tests, nurse times, doctor's times.
Really long.
But also we're giving them an alternative for the other options that they may not be given through the NHS. So taking an example of maybe acne. People don't necessarily know that they can go to their NHS doctor for acne treatment. But acne is a huge issue, impacts an individual's self-confidence as well as their skin. So by giving people the option, not just for whatever is the cheapest, because that's what you'd get on the NHS, but whatever is best, whatever is first line, if they're willing to pay for that out of pocket at an affordable cost, why shouldn't they have access to that treatment? Why do they have to jump through this 6 to 12 month loop of this is the first treatment you started, it doesn't work, okay, let's go to this treatment, it doesn't work, let's now push you through to a dermatologist to get a slightly more expensive treatment on the NHS because they have all these barriers to try and mitigate costs.
Wow. So I do think that there's real like a need, as you said, to fill a gap to fill.
Yeah, exactly. It's working in combination. So the less people we have going to A&E for minor health issues, or even going to their GP for more cosmetic issues, we are then able to free up those doctors' times, those nurses' times, those pharmacists' times for the more acute things that you generally cannot handle over the internet.
So talking a bit more about the business model, because
Yes.
I do think that's an important topic for all entrepreneurs. How did you go from like having a B2C platform to thinking about having your B2B and working with partners? How did you come up with that?
Yeah, of course. So I guess for us in a B2C platform, a big part of it is how do you acquire customers? And when you're starting off, a big part of that is probably spending money on Google ads, on Facebook ads, working with affiliate marketing programs just to get your name out there. When we started with the affiliate marketing program, what we realized was lots of companies in different industries were working with us. So people within cosmetics, people in forums, gym groups, etc. And we realized that they were doing it because they identified their customers would have a need. And these wouldn't necessarily be people who would know to search for these treatments online. So I threw Oscar back into community pharmacy. And he actually asked 3,000 people, do you know that online pharmacy is an option for you to get this medication? And only 11% said they knew it was an option.
Wow.
So for us, we then started thinking, how do we reach the other 89% of people within our target demographic when they don't even know to search? And the kind of conclusion at that point was to go through partnerships.
So do you have a lot of customers coming from those partners, those brands?
Yeah, we started in August, so that was our first one. We've got another one going live on Friday, which is very exciting.
You're going to tell us afterwards?
Yes, of course. And we're seeing the growth to be significantly more than what we originally expected. So I think looking at it, we were originally expecting to have done about 100 customers so far. We are 16 times that.
Wow. So obviously when we hear a bit of your stories, we feel like it's kind of like a nice success story, but behind it we know that it's a lot of hard work and a lot of challenges, and especially as a woman as well, because you're like in tech, and as we know there's kind of still few women in tech and we need to promote more. So tell us a bit more about what were the challenges for you, and especially did you feel any challenges being a woman and involving developing your company?
Yes, of course. I think prior to this, I probably would have turned around and said, oh no, sexism is not a thing, I would have been one of those people who kind of just blazed ahead and just got things done. And you don't realize the subconscious bias that there is within the ecosystem. The best example I have from that is actually when we reached out cold to investors.
Yeah, you told me.
So we thought at one point, actually, maybe it's time for us to go much bigger. Let's bring on external capital. Let's talk to institutional investors and basically get some money in, grow the big business further. We come from a background which we don't have many networks, we don't have huge connections. So I reached out cold to a lot of these people. I found them off of Crunchbase and deal rooms, and then I found them on LinkedIn and tried to reach them. And initially I thought, okay, the success rate is pretty good. So I probably get about 33 percent of people actually accepting my LinkedIn request. And then when I finally got into a conversation with them, they were like, oh yeah, fine, send me the deck. And then that may or may not turn into a conversation. There was 1 week where I maxed out my LinkedIn connection requests. So I think you get like 100 LinkedIn connections.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know, right? Clearly just whooshing through every corporate institutional investor. So I turned to Oscar and I was like, hey, do you mind if I log into your account so I can just continue my list because I've got some time? And he was like, yeah, so he gave me his username and password. I reached out to the VCs. His connection request was 72%.
Wow.
So they all, like 72% of people, compared to my 33%, immediately just connected with him. He's obviously a white man. When he did get into a conversation with them, their first response was, let's have a meeting. Not send me the deck and I'll vet this beforehand. Which was incredibly eye-opening. As someone who didn't really notice it, I think actually you obviously find ways around it, but it's still there. We talk about the work we're doing to move women forward, both at the top level and actually at the middle level, more importantly. And I think there's a really big issue where if you are inclined in that direction, you suddenly get surrounded by an echo chamber of the things you like. You see success stories. Suddenly your news feeds, your social media feeds are of other women succeeding. So you believe it's happening.
Exactly.
But the reality is it's not. Outside your micro ecosystem, it actually doesn't happen.
It's still a big issue.
It's a huge issue. I was very shocked by that. I would, for all the people who actually accepted cold requests from me, took meetings, there were some incredible individuals in that who just took a chance on us, and they hold a very dear place to my heart.